Let's bring in CTV's Jeremie Charron with more on this for us. Jeremie, good to see you. Break it all down for us. Trump once again upping his global tariffs. What do we know?
Yeah, Renee, look, I mean, less than 24 hours after the president blasted the Supreme Court for its decision and then imposed new 10% global tariffs, now he's increased those tariffs to 15%, only further pushing forward his tariff policies and doubling down on his administration's goal to continue forward with this style of trade action. And so, what we're seeing here is the trade tariff, or the tariff rate rather, increased to 15%. Important to note, under these new Section 122 tariffs that Donald Trump is using to impose these measures, these levies, 15% is the maximum he can impose on these countries, and he has a time period of about 150 days to impose them. If he wants to extend that, he would need congressional approval. So really, this is buying the administration time. We're talking about a 5-month period where they impose these tariffs, and then they can look through other investigations. He's talked about Section 301 tariffs, where his office has launched investigations and will look to determine whether or not, unfair and or discriminatory trade practices are happening by other countries toward the U.S. And if they're able to determine that through investigations, they'll be able to impose new tariffs under Section 301. So this is, a time period for he and his office to be able to conduct those investigations while imposing these tariffs. And important to note that for Canada's purposes, we avoid most of these tariffs. These tariffs there'll be a carve-out for products covered under KUSMA, as was the case with the prior IEEPA tariffs that had been imposed. And so, by and large, Renee, this is not going to have a significant impact on Canada's economy. Not to say it won't have any impact at all, but about 90% of trade between our countries is covered under KUSMA, and therefore will be sheltered from these tariffs. Where there is a larger impact for Canada is the uncertainty it creates. It means we're now under this period of 150 days where he and his office will look at what else they can do moving forward, and all of that happens as Canada is looking to review the trade agreement that we have, KUSMA, with the U.S. and Mexico. That deadline is July 1st to conduct that review. And the big thing here is that deal is what is allowing us to avoid most of these tariffs. So depending on what happens come that July 1st deadline, it is a protection that Canada has right now, but is no longer guaranteed after July 1st, depending again on the outcome. So there's a lot at stake when it comes to those KUSMA review talks.
What have we heard from the federal government, Jeremie, pardon me?
That's okay, Renee. Yeah, look, the federal government is staying pretty quiet on this. Commenting yesterday, the minister in charge of Canada-U.S. trade, Dominic LeBlanc, commenting about the Supreme Court's decision, and that they were happy to see that the Supreme Court ruled in calling these tariffs unlawful, which has been Canada's position all along, but then also identifying that there are different sectoral tariffs that are still in place and are more impactful to Canada. Those are the tariffs that are hitting the auto industry hard, the steel and aluminum sector, softwood lumber. Those tariffs are unimpacted by this Supreme Court ruling because they're underpinned by different legal means. And so, moving forward, Canada is still looking to address those concerns and the impacts of those tariffs while focusing on the renegotiation or the review of KUSMA, where the pressure is only mounting and, more is at stake now. It is crucial for Canada to try and get a good deal because, again, Renee, as I've touched on, it is what has allowed us to avoid the brunt of most of these tariffs so far. And so come July 1st, if Canada isn't able to extend the agreement, keep it as is or whatever the case may be, if that agreement doesn't stay in place and offer the protections that exist now, our economy will be significantly harder hit by the tariffs that have been imposed by the U.S. administration, while so far we've been able to avoid most of them as a result of that deal. So, there is a lot at stake when it comes to that KUSMA review, and it would appear that Canada's the federal government is really focused on that, staying fairly quiet on this decision, not making, anything, any big show about it, but really, narrowing in and being focused on the negotiations that are happening. We have a new ambassador to the U.S. Who is in place and will play a key role, and a new appointee who will head negotiations between Canada and the U.S. So, that process is underway, and there's a lot at stake here ahead of that July 1st deadline.
Right. All right, Jeremie, thank you for this. That is CTV's Jeremie Charron reporting for us from Ottawa.